I like the way you put the question, because it have to be differentiated from the grid, because we are not talking of sources of generation. And sources of generation, we are not even sources of, we are not talking of location of generations.
Yes.
Yes. Location of the generation helps even to make the grid very, very stable. Why does it make it very stable? Because, as I've told you, what every equipment there is meant to protect itself against any hazard. So if we have it from different sources, it means if from different direction, if from one direction, the protection they operate to cut off supply, we get supply from the other directions. At the moment, all the powers that were generated in the Niger Delta coming into Lagos, mainly through the Benin-Ikeja West line, though there is a recently been line. Now, if anything happens to that, those things, the makeup of power that comes into Lagos is actually in jeopardy. But if we have a generation in Lagos like we have in enough generation, it means it can sustain itself while we are sorting out the problems on the transmission line. The same thing goes to Abuja. If we have a generation in Abuja, it will be nice. So that instead of all the power going from Lagos to Abuja, from Lagos to through Osogbo to Jeba, up to Shiroro, Abuja axis, if we have generation in Abuja, it makes it easy. One, it will help reduce transmission losses, because for you to transmit power from Lagos to Abuja, there are a lot of losses along the line. I mentioned to you how losses come about. There are loss in the transformers, there are those loss on the transmission line.
Yes.
But if that length is short, then the losses are minimized. In fact, the longer the length, the more problematic it becomes to operate. But if we have generations scattered all over the country, the grid will be very simple to manage, very easy to operate. But it's because, one, we don't have enough generation. Let us tell ourselves the truth. Many times, if you go to the records of national control, I know many managers, or especially those appointed politically, who have gone to see Osogbo and said, people here are doing magic. The people there are doing magic. As far as when I was in service, I don't know whether they have improved their facility. They were doing magic. Because nobody could operate what they're operating and keep the system not collapsing 3-4 times a day. But they try to manage it. So what is there is that, and this difficulty in managing the grid is as a result of all this. One generation comes only from only one location, like you have said, almost south-south. The closest you have in the north, well, prior to the advent of Geregu, is the hydro stations that are over there. But all the same, all of them have to send power to as far as Maiduguri. So you can imagine that distance. Some of them, Sokoto may be closer to the Kainji area. But going to Maiduguri is a very far distance. And that makes this power, especially if it's coming from Lagos, because generation can be depleted. And the hydros, now that we're coming into rainy season, and the rainy season, the dams are building up, hydros will peak their generation. When the rainy seasons go down, they start managing their dam. They may have, at a point in time, when I was in service, at a point in time, Shiroro will have 4 of its machines available, but will only be operating 1. Because the dam has gone so low. So, you see, having different sources of generation when it comes to raw material and different locations helps even manage the grid better. If I start from, by the time I joined NEPA in the 70s, NEPA has developmental plans of how power plants will be built. those that will come up in Onitsha, those will come up in Benue, those will come up in several locations, those that will be hydro, that will be distinct. But by the 70s, 80s, nobody talked of a plan. Now, one of the things that government, we have operated power. First of all, we have operated in this country as a social commodity, social service, especially being operated by government, not government alone. They were doing it. There were no private investors brought in. There was no partial commercialization of NEPA anywhere. Rather, the only thing that brought NEPA into anything called commercial is what you call the power sector reforms of 2005. Now, with that, government alone was involved in the business. Power is a very expensive business. Now, when we left that one, instead of growing to make it an economic commercial commodity, in this country now we have made it a political commodity. In fact, if you ask any politician now, what do they call it? What do they call it? What they take themselves and say it's a constituency project. All of them will rush into, oh, we're going to buy transformers. Transformers don't generate power, for goodness sake. And we end up, in fact, one of the biggest things that I felt we did in this country, and most of the time I said, maybe because we don't plan. We make statements, we don't plan towards it. First, we woke up, we created local government, and we said, reconnect every local government. And we started drawing transmission and distribution line to every nook and corner. Everybody got connected. It should be a gradual process, matching your generation. That process I've made out today, I am sure that nobody can tell you how much power. Anybody who tells you 10,000, 20,000, it's a guesswork. There is no data anywhere. Anybody can say, this is the data. And this is our growth rate. Now, if you don't have a growth rate, you don't have a plan, tell me how you are going to invest and invest profitably. So some of these investors you are talking, now that we've gone private, two things are at stake. One, we have no data. I want to challenge anybody to give me a data that says this is Lagos is growing. This is Lagos power this year. By 2025, this is Lagos power consumption. It is based on that investors will be looking at for their money. That is one aspect. So any investor coming from outside will be coming to say, I put in my money, that's how I'm going to recover it. Today, the investors we are seeing are all local investors. So now, when we're coming in, foreign investors, well, you know, who is investing in power? The only independent power that has come in, and they will come in with a very exorbitant rate. Why do they do so? Everybody knows, whether we like it or not, that the situation in this country, security-wise, does not encourage investors from outside to come. Because they want the place that is stable. Electricity is such that you don't recover your investment in 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. Some of them are 20 years. Then when you start, say, I have recovered my investment. So, in the country now, every investor coming in wants to see where he will invest and get his money in the next 5 years. 5 years is so much, and get out. Because he is not sure of the security situation. So a lot of, and if some of them are coming to invest here, the cost of investment is very high because the risk factor is very high. And we'll look at the tariff aspect because again, we're operating it as what? Still a social political service. Until we move out from there and look at it as, it is a commodity. If I give you, if I produce Coke and give it to you, I have factored in my cost of production and cost of production, cost of sales, and everything, and say this is how much we sell it. If that is done, then my profit margin is on top of it. First, I will give you the last one. Not advisory committee. It was actually, well, let me call it a committee to study the system collapses that were happening, and a lot happened between 2013, 2014. That was when that committee was set up to study the series of system collapses that happened and then provide solution. Part of the things that were discovered on the transmission line were maintenance of the lines. What do you mean by maintenance of the lines? The transmission line passed, especially coming from the Niger Delta area, passed through thick bush, forest. Transmission line is meant to be cleared. If you have a 330 kV transmission line, you should have at least 50 meters this way, 50 meters this way of a motorable road. That is so that when the transmission people are moving about, they can move with their distance. But if you go there, in most of them, you don't even have it. You have trees. So some of them trees grow and touch the transmission lines. And remember that those trees, especially at that high voltage, and coupled with the fact that, especially rainy season, those trees, the rain and everything, become conductors. And what do? They bridge the line, conducting power to earth. That line, we see that as a fault, and it is a fault. Because rightly, it can kill somebody around there. One, it will be lead to a lot of current being drawn from the generator, which can burn the generator, which can burn the transformer. So the protections there, we see them. And say, this current is too much. Shut. And then it will shut off itself. It doesn't need anybody's permission to do that. So part of the recommendation, though most of them were being done at that time, a lot of contracts were awarded. I don't know how it is now, but I don't travel much again for all that. So most of them, they were done to make sure that they are cleared, to make sure that the transmission lines clear very far away, such that when it rains, even if a tree falls, it will not actually touch the transmission line. That was part of the recommendation, that all the transmission areas, especially the one that passes between Benin and Lagos, that actually was the highest fault zone in the system at that time. So it was recommended that that should be done. Two, the maintenance again of the transmission. You see, when you don't have enough, it's just like one man who has a car, which he runs to transport. And that's what he used to feed his family. And that's what he used to run the expenses. So what happens? That car must be on the road. So even when the noise is, hearing noise, I will attend to it. Because they cannot afford to park that car 1 minute, because money will not come for 2 days. Mechanic will say, oh, guy, I need this car for 5 days. They cannot. Some of the things that happened, which we found out that, you see, this protection we talked about, what we call relays. And they are installed in such a way that some of them are supervising each other. For instance, if you are running a relay race, this one comes, he gives you a button, isn't it? And then the next one moves. So, if at a time, well, you may know that may be looking at that as human judgment coming in, and that something has happened on the man here takes a decision. But in that particular position, take for instance, if a fault is introduced in Benin, Ikeja West Line, as it's been called, the relays at both ends, that's what we call it, is supposed to clear it. That is, isolate that place. Clearing it means isolate that line so that no more power flows into it. That's the essence. There's no more power flows into it. So both of them will operate the breakers at that end to protect that line. But if the breaker in is failing, at that particular moment, so if the breaker in the Ikeja West is failing, A breaker in Igbin, a protection in Igbin is monitoring the one in Ikeja West, in which you will say, you received a signal to shut down. You didn't shut down. There may be a problem with you. So he will do the shutdown for you. So this many times, one of the things we found at that time is that because of poor maintenance, they were almost, some of them, not synchronizing. We found a situation where a fault in Benin, a fault in Sapele Benin line was cleared off in Ikeja West. So because the coordination, because these are, when I say coordination, it's timing. These coordinations were not proper. So I will equally recommended at that time they should actually try and make out time to make sure that substations and all the relays are recalibrated and made to coordinate with each other. That's it. One of the most critical is level of generation in the country. It is very low. Generating capacity is far lower than what this country, in fact, far less than the connected load. Let me even use that expression. Because if we require 10,000 megawatts and we are generating 5 and we have connected load that's 10,000 megawatts, we'll manage it. But here, every man that finishes his house gets NEPA. Now it is private, gets him to connect. Nobody asks the question, even whether the transformer that is beside the house is overloaded. So they connect you. Before you know what is happening, that transformer is overloaded. Before you know what is happening, when it's overloaded, what is the breaker blows? That's the fuse and the transformer blows. What do? We go and remove the breaker, remove the fuse, take wire, bind it, put it there. The time for that fuse to blow will not blow. The current have exceeded what is required. It's heating up the windings of the transformer. Before we know what is happening, the transformer has gone into flame. We said the transformer is burnt. Why wouldn't it burn? At a point in time in those days, they said it's only Nigeria that hear transformers burn. That's what the foreign contractors will tell us. It's only in Nigeria we hear transformers burnt. Because we overload. We don't apply the protection. We must continue to give power. So if we have, before the man connects with another house being built in this street, he goes to the transformer. He goes to the records. That's actually where he goes. First of all, there's no record. He goes to the records and says, this amount of load in this transformer. Because of this amount of load on this transformer, sorry, we cannot connect you. Until we change the transformer, we cannot connect it. It is never done anywhere. Two, outside that, that is not done. The NEPA in those days will say, when you want to increase your load, please inform us. Everybody says, so that they will bring us big bill. So even you as a person, you increase your load in your house. NEPA, even if they have any record, have the form you fill that your consumption is 20 watts, or let me say 1 kilowatt. But while you have increased your load, you are consuming 2 or 3. So these are the kind of things. Now, so what I brought in this issue, remember I said electricity is not stored. If you generate, you have to consume. Now, consumers take. When a generator goes out, it will not inform you I'm going out. It can go out on a fault. When a consumer is dropping his load or when he's switching off in his house, switching off his equipment, he's not going to phone a place, I'm going to switch. So for that reason again, you do not load every machine to its maximum. You load it such a way that you leave some margin, we call it a spinning reserve, such that if a consumer drops, takes in a load, then the generator will just load up. We call it, when operating that spinning reserve, we operate a machine on what we call free governing control. On a free governing control, it means the generator can be looking at the load and be going up and down.
Okay,
We recommended that to be done. We even went, I personally went around the power plant, tried to introduce it. But it's a service that must be paid for. So some of the things that happened that some of the power plants did not agree. They could not come up with adequate agreement with the market operator, because it is really the market operator's job to negotiate and pay for those services. Unfortunately, where we are now, we have what they call embed. And for goodness sake, some of us who operated, looked at the Power Sector Reform Act, where embed came in, that has become an issue in the country now, I don't know. So what we are now looking at, we now have one NEPA, who is the bulk buyer, and gives to everybody. I can't give you an actual cost, but it is not actually said in this thing. It is said per megawatt.
Yeah, sorry, $1 million per megawatt.
It may be more than that. When you go to, depending on where you are building. For instance, I have mentioned to you to build a power plant in America. No, let's even that in America. It's different from building a power plant in Nigeria. There was a time when I was in Germany and we were discussing wind power. That is windmill. And we went to, and at that particular time, they said it will cost about $1.5 million to erect one windmill. By the time the power generation that will be going almost about 2 or 3 megawatts. That's what we generate. But that is over there. Over here, it will cost more. Why will it cost more? You have heavy equipment you need to transport to field. And those heavy equipment, what will you do? You must build road that will take them to, because that windmill is going to be in one remote area. So that's what I mean. It depends. Everything is depends on. We usually say about to get power. Well, I'm now talking of the maybe nearly 10 years ago. We are talking of about $1.5 million to get 1 megawatt generated and getting to the consumer. So that's the way it is looked at.
Thank you.